Hello and welcome to Midwest Writers Room. Our mission is to encourage, educate, and celebrate writers of the Midwest. I'm Luella Schmidt.
And I'm Ken Humphrey. Today we're interviewing Michael Braun, owner of Orange Hat Publishing and 1016 Press. Michael holds a BA in English Literature and a MA and PhD in Communication Science, all from the University of Wisconsin at Madison.
Michael purchased Orange Hat from founder Shannon Ishizaki in 2024. Before that, he worked in academic research and evaluation positions at the University of Illinois and the Medical College of Wisconsin. When not running Orange Hat, Michael is also an adjunct professor at the Milwaukee School of Engineering, where he teaches writing. Michael is a Wisconsin native. He grew up in Algoma, Wisconsin, just south of Door County. We are so lucky to have you with us today, Michael. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It is wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yes, on this wonderful October day, it's October 29th, when we're recording this, sunny, 55 degrees, just kind of beautiful blue sky that you want to have. And so before we talk more in depth about things like Orange Hat or some of your other interests, Michael, we want to talk a little bit about you first. And so let's run this up to your origin story. Where did you get your inclination for writing? Was there a point that you knew you were going to be involved in writing as a career? And did you ever think about being an owner of a publishing house?
Well, Ken, I feel like I have only terrible answers when it comes to this question of how to work in publishing, because the reality is I never set out to work in publishing. The kind of writing and other pieces that I was most involved with all dealt with academic publishing. So doing research, largely quantitative research, lots of number crunching, and then writing up journal articles for publication in scholarly journals. That was what I thought my career was going to be. Part of the path that you go down in a career like that is with a lot of grant funding. And I ran into a situation in which some money that was promised fell through. And I was in a position of asking myself what I wanted to do next. And that's kind of how I stumbled into this opportunity with Orange Hat. I reached out to our founder, Shannon Ishizaki, because I knew her as a well-connected person and had worked with her on a couple of book publishing projects as part of the research position that I was in. And I asked her if she knew anyone who was hiring, and if she did, if she could pass my name along. And that's when I got this amazing email back from her where she said, seriously, how about buying my company? And my initial reaction was, no, I'm a researcher. That's what I do. But anytime you get an email like that, you have to sit down for coffee. And sitting down, talking through the business, talking through the work, it didn't take me long to decide this was really too amazing an opportunity to pass up. And as someone who's always loved books and writing and literature and everything that goes along with that creative process, I could not have made a better switch. This has just been an absolute joy these past 18 months or so since initially talking with Shannon.
So let's dig into that a little bit then. Is it easy for you to identify those couple of 2 or 3 points that really, I think, flipped your opinion on not being a potential owner to being a potential owner? What were those things that really pushed you over the edge that you couldn't pass up?
One of the first things that I did when I sat down with Shannon, I said, Shannon, I want you to tell me what you think this business is at its core, at its heart. And I'm going to tell you what I think the business is. And we'll see if we have alignment there. And I thought if we didn't have alignment, still a perfect place to have further conversation. But if we do have alignment, that'll really mean something. And Shannon said, Michael, it's all about relationships with the authors. And I said, Shannon, that is exactly what I was going to say. It's such a core piece of what we do and such a core piece of how we understand the publishing business. Not about chasing a bestseller, not about chasing categories where it seems like people are buying, but instead focused individually on the author, looking at their journey, understanding what they need and what will be meaningful for them, and then finding ways to do our best to deliver that. I think that that particular piece for me tapped into two components that I felt like I'd gotten away from in my career. The first was a focus on helping people and being as directly involved with someone who's trying to achieve a goal as possible. Research tends to be disconnected from that kind of really tangible outcome. And then the second piece that really mattered to me was to bring creativity back into my life, to have opportunities for creative expression, and to be around and involved with creative people. And once again, there are creative elements in research, but it's not quite the same free expression that you can get through writing up books and publishing. And with that mindset and with that understanding moving forward, this just has been such a natural transition and an amazing fit. And to be able to be the person who owns the business, the person who's ultimately responsible for those relationships with authors, gives me meaning every single day.
Yeah, and that's great to hear. And I know I speak for Loyola and myself when you say we're just glad that somebody is able to carry on the Orange Hat 1016 press torch, right? Shannon, we both run across Shannon in the past. We've got a number of WWA members that are Orange Hat authors. So it's great that it didn't just dwindle into nothing. So
it is great.
based
And
on,
I'm so glad to be able to carry that forward. It means so much to me and to get to understand what Orange Hat has meant to so many people. At this point in time, we're approaching almost 700 books published in over 14 years of business, and we've worked with over 400 authors. And all of those people have a product that they are proud of, that they should be proud of, that we want to stay in the world and be available.
yeah, that's crazy. That's a great churn for you. So with your background in academic research and writing, is there anything that you pull from there when you're evaluating manuscripts that can come in under all sorts of different genres that don't necessarily have the grounding or anchors that an academic paper would need to have?
The pieces that I think I bring most from academic publishing into Orange Hat all have to do with our process. Many authors are familiar with the usual way that submitting a manuscript to a publisher works, right? You send it off, maybe directly from the author, or maybe you need an agent to even get someone to look at the manuscript. And then the default expectation is that you're never going to hear back. And that leads you to assume, well, if they looked at it, they weren't interested. And maybe they were a little interested, but it wasn't enough to even bother sending a letter of rejection to say, hey, thanks so much, keep it going. That is completely different from how academic publishing works. In academic publishing, the editor of an academic journal is a member of that academic community, and their reputation is built in part on their service to that community by taking on that editorship role with the journal. So when you submit an article to a journal, you hear back, yes, we received your submission. Everyone who submits an article will get a decision back from that editor, even if the editor says, yeah, I took a look and it's not a good fit for us, we're passing on it. Still, everyone will hear back. So when it came time for us, I said, this is both just the right way to do things, I think, and the way that I have experience with doing things, but it's also keeping our attention on that relationship with authors. So when a submission comes into Orange Hat, just like an editor of an academic journal, I send an email to that author saying, hey, we got your submission. This is when we're going to be reviewing it, and you will hear back from us by the end of that time period. And then indeed, everyone gets feedback on their submission and the decision, including those cases, those many, many cases where we are passing on a submission. I still want authors to know that they matter and that submitting something, even if it wasn't right for us or not quite ready, based on our judgment of it, that author still knows they did something that matters and they did something that was really brave in sending that out for decision. And I think that's the biggest piece that I bring in from academic publishing. My assessment of manuscripts all comes from my English background. Being an English major, I always say it's the best career choice I ever made because it's given me so many tools. And then just as a passionate reader, someone who for a long, long time have always been reading books, always have 2 or 3 books in progress, and someone who loves thinking about books and being thoughtful about them. And I think that skill serves me really well when looking through manuscripts of all different types and offering judgment on them.
What are some of your preferred genres as a fan reader, a casual reader?
The types of things that I read most commonly just for myself tend to be nonfiction. I love history, especially when the history is more narrative in nature, where it's maybe focused on a small slice of history within a broader world event. So, for example, I love the author Eric Larson, who's written, I think, books that a lot of people know. The Devil in the White City is maybe one of his most famous works that many people will heard of. He also had great success recently with the book The Splendid and the Vile, which is about the first year of Churchill under the Blitz, that kind of first wave of attacks on England at the start of World War II. So I love reading that personally. It's kind of the area I think that I lean to most. I love browsing in the library or a bookstore for books like that.
All right, very good. So Luella, segment 2 is going to be chock full of stuff. So let's jump a little bit early into our WW message. You okay with that?
Sounds good.
All right, folks. Registration is now open for our winter session of the virtual critique classes. Over the last year, we've adjusted some of our offerings and time slots to better serve all enrollees. These changes came as a result of feedback directly from previous sessions, and we hope more people are able to join and partake in these classes. Learn more at wiwrite.org/writing programs.
All right, back to Michael. So, prior to you joining the publishing industry as a small publisher, what was your perspective on the industry as a whole before you joined?
I think I knew the industry the way that a lot of folks know the industry, even for folks who are just getting started with writing or maybe have always had an interest in publishing. It's a very New York centric view with an understanding that the big publishing houses are the ones who are bringing out work and are publishing the kind of work that gets our attention. You look at the spines on books on your bookshelf and see a lot of the same names repeated again and again. And I think that was my main perspective for how publishing happened. And then some familiarity with the idea of self-publishing as well as print-on-demand technology. I remember reading about that in, oh gosh, I don't even know, maybe a Time magazine or something when I was a kid, and thinking, well, that sounds kind of interesting, that you could have an amazing printer that could literally spit out a book in seconds. It seemed pretty wild. But beyond that, I hadn't given much thought to it in my own kind of creative ventures or dreams about, maybe publishing a book someday or getting to write something. It never went beyond that vague sense of, oh, this would be neat. This would be cool. So I think in terms of the way that the publishing industry really works for most writers, I was pretty ignorant. And getting to work with Shannon on a couple of publishing projects that were part of my job, publishing a couple of scholarly essay collections, really opened my eyes to all the different ways in which books get out in the world and the opportunities that exist for authors and for publishers who want to put on that entrepreneurial hat and spend time with books, getting them out in the world and getting them into the hands of people who love them, and how much that is just a vital force for keeping amazing and interesting books coming out, even when those books don't fit into some kind of sales category.
Yeah, I think our listeners may have heard me nerd out about small businesses in particular. I was a small business owner too, and I feel very passionately that if we all just spend a little more time being cognizant of where we spend our money, we can change the world. If we go out of our way to help small businesses and to sort of go, just focus on that. And I'm wondering if, it's been how many years now, and you have really kind of been in the trenches of it. And I'm wondering what you've learned, since then, what your experience has shown you about how publishing works now that you've been in it.
Yeah, I think understanding the way that an author approaches a publishing project and the way in which great things can happen when the author's goals fit really well with things that the publisher can do, that you can get a really special relationship that matters a lot. And it's one of the biggest things that I think about now along the lines of this relationship piece that I talked about earlier, but thinking about the relationship between publisher and author as a partnership and understanding that when both sides are coming to the table with a similar sense of what we can achieve together and an understanding of what our roles are, it can mean for really special things. And of course, we recognize that authors have all kinds of different goals, and publishers and businesses of all different types have different services that they can provide. So having that conversation and figuring out what it looks like to work together, is something that really matters and something that's really exciting. I love being able to say yes to someone's project because I think it's a great project. And then to have a conversation later on about particular goals and what we think we can achieve together, and really planning that path to try to achieve that. Whether an author's goal is simply to get the book in the world so that people can buy it if they want to buy it, or whether the author's goal centers a lot around marketing and a plan for, putting together a book tour, reaching out to a wide network of bookstores about stocking the book, doing an elaborate social media campaign to really raise awareness and attention and excitement about the book. We can find ways to work with all different types of authors. And that's something that keeps the business side of things, for me, feeling creative, feeling fresh, feeling exciting. There's always something new to learn from every single author. And I love exploring this world with them.
Yeah, so do we, right, Ken? I'm wondering if you have, I mean, if you could just talk briefly on the different models, the publishing models that we're seeing. One of the things that's so exciting right now is there are multiple different ways to get your book in the world. And I'm wondering if you could just share a little bit of your expertise there.
Yeah, there's kind of two poles that I think about with publishing. And the poles are great to understand. So one pole is the way that most folks intuitively, have kind of grown to understand publishing. Big Five or however many are left, often New York, waiting for agent queries, getting to pick and choose among thousands of options, the books that they think will be most commercially successful, and getting those books in the world. That's an amazing path for people who want to pursue it. And it can mean really exciting things for those authors where that path is the path that they're on, and the path where they find success. The other pole, the opposite side of things, which is another really exciting and cool area, is the self-publishing piece, where authors are able to see direct return from their investment in their book and the hard work that they can put in. There are authors who love the chance to design their own cover, to design their own interior of the book, and get to see all of that come together in a package that they themselves are putting out there. It makes me think of folks who record and self-release music. There is a joy in knowing that you did all that work yourself and you get to see your product in the world. Self-publishing is amazing, and I encourage people to check it out. There's also, between those two poles, this really healthy and thriving middle area, and this is where Orange Hat sits. Publishers of all different sizes, from the very small up to mid-size presses, are finding ways to thrive in the market. The way that Orange Hat has thrived all these years is through an author subsidized model, sometimes called a hybrid publishing model, in which the author pays a modest amount to help cover the costs of publishing, and in return receives a much higher royalty rate, as well as other perks for the sale of their book. This has allowed us to have firm financial footing, not to get rich. Alas, none of us are getting rich, but to be able to stay in business and know that we have a model that works going forward and can help us survive things like rising print costs, especially when print costs rise, but book prices haven't really risen at the same rate. But it's okay. It fits well with our model. It's not something that's going to rock the boat. And we're proud to be in the market that way and to have survived for this long and published so many books, because I think we've found a business model that works for everybody, that allows authors to get a great experience for a relatively small investment, and allows us to stay in business and operating and being there to support all those authors with whatever they need.
Yeah, very nice. So we always like to ask our guests if they have advice for aspiring writers. And I know that's a very big, broad question that can be about, networking. It can be about publishing. It can be about writing the craft itself. So what do you got for us?
There are so many ways to go with this question, and it's one of those things that there's probably great advice that could be tailored to every individual author, because every author has their own unique skill set and the things that they love doing, the things that bring them joy. I'm a big fan of taking strengths and focusing on ways to build on those strengths. That's how I approach work as an editor, trying to identify strengths in the work and enhance those strengths. And I think it's also something authors should focus on when it comes to marketing. You know, an author who is a natural at connecting with other people may find a lot of joy and excitement for expanding what they're doing on social media. Whereas an author who that's just not their jam, that's not something that they want to do, it's not like all the doors to marketing and promotion and other things are closed to them. There are other things that they can do. There are other ways that they can thrive within this world. So with that in mind, I'll throw out a few ideas. I'll try to keep them relatively straightforward and brief so that they apply as well as possible to authors. The first one is keep being brave, because that's what I think authors are doing when they're writing in the first place, when they're sending a manuscript out to a critique partner or someone else to get their feedback. And then ultimately, when they send that manuscript off to a publisher, authors are being brave. And they have achieved something greater, whether their manuscript is loved or rejected or whatever happens to it. They have achieved something greater than so many other aspiring writers who don't let that manuscript leave their computer and end up having it sit there for who knows how long, probably forever in so many cases. So keep being brave, authors. The next piece of advice, and this relates a little more to marketing, is about literary citizenship. It is wonderful when an author has a book coming out to be able to post about that on social media and say, hey, buy my book. But that's not a great way to get more followers. And it's not really a way to participate in the broader literary community. So thinking about literary citizenship as what the author is doing to engage with a community of writers, going to book talks, finding ways to read advanced copies and give feedback, being part of a writing group or a critique circle or whatever structure it might be, so that you're involved with all steps of the craft. And then taking time to share that and be open to folks about your love of books, what you're reading, what you're writing, what you're seeing from others, and talking about that is just a great way to be a true participant within this broader network. And that means any attempts to reach out and share something about your book is going to have such a bigger effect than if the only thing you ever post about is your own book. And then the third piece is related to this literary citizenship piece, being open to feedback and critique. That's an easy one to say, a hard one to do, and I'm going to take it one step further for authors. Be strong and say no if you don't think that the suggestion is taking your manuscript in the right way. Stand up for what you're doing. Trust your own creative instincts and treat any kind of editing or feedback or critique as an opportunity for discussion, not as an opportunity for a transactional relationship in which someone says, do this, and you say, okay, I'll do it. But instead, as something that really is centered on transforming your work and approaching critique with that in mind. It's a really hard thing to do, but writers are already being brave with sending their work out and doing other things. They're already thinking about participating in this literary community. And I think this is just one step further. And I think writers all over can do it.
Well, that was excellent advice.
Great perspective. So Luella, take note, literary citizenship. We got to start leveraging that phrase. What a fantastic turn of phrase there, Michael.
Well, and you are all part of it. What you're doing right now, and all the listeners here too, you're all part of this big literary country we have, I guess, if I need to continue and torture this citizenship metaphor.
All right. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and touch on a very hot topic in the world in general, but especially in creative corners, whether it be music, literature, art, movies. And we're going to talk a little bit about AI. I want to tee it up first, though, with I came across an article today that the AI company Anthropic, which is the makers of Claude AI, agreed to a $1.5 billion settlement over copyright infringement. It was brought by the Authors Guild and included authors such as George R.R. Martin, Grisham's in there, Balducci. So it had some heavyweight names in there, and Claude AI essentially said, "Okay, we will pay 1.5 billion settlement." I don't know where the money goes. Not going to land in any of our wallets, but it's something that I think a lot of artists are looking for. AI right now is the big bad, right? It's It's the monster in the closet because it's going to steal our works, right? They use our works to train the models. I want to get your perspective on AI because you're coming at it from a little bit different standpoint. Your opinion on it is just the viability of it. So let us talk to us about that.
Yeah, this is something I've been reading and listening to a lot about lately. And like a lot of folks, I think I have my kind of ear and eye on the market with the focus on this so-called AI bubble. The idea that the amount of money promised that is boosting stock prices to astronomical highs is not money that may ultimately materialize, or if it's there now, it may not be there in the future, meaning that the stocks are overvalued and they could be due for a big drop. So that's kind of my entry point and my interest point in here. And the message that I want to offer when it comes to AI and the notion that AI is coming to replace human creation, I stand not in the middle of this debate, but outside of it. So I think on the one side, we have folks who are saying we have to support human creation. We need to, boost up humans against this threat of AI. And I want you to know I am 100% on your side. I completely agree with that. The other side of things is, well, AI is coming. There's nothing you can do to change that. And yes, it's going to disrupt things, but disruptive things happen all the time. You got to focus on the positives. There's going to be way more positive things than negatives. This is just the creative destruction that we come to expect in a capitalist system. I have the perspective that number one, AI is not going to displace human creation because no one has demonstrated any ability for AI to generate something of quality that is replacing humans. And two, that the notion that AI is coming, there's nothing we can do to stop it, is patently false because the companies that are making all these bold promises are consistently under-delivering with the quality of product. What's being delivered is not something that is coming for anyone's job. And two, the companies that are doing it are spending billions of dollars a month, losing billions of dollars a month with absolutely no path to making money because they have not created any products that people want to pay for. So I think we are in a bubble, both for the market, and apologies to everyone who is, keeping a special eye on retirement funds or other things and hoping to draw on those soon. It's probably going to lead to some drop in values. But also, we are in a place where our conversations about AI are not going to be increasingly hand-wringy, but instead are going to be, hey, wasn't that a fun novelty where we thought these models would get increasingly better and better and better and ultimately displace humans? I don't think that there is any position, anything that we've seen so far suggesting that is something that is coming. And I would encourage everyone to continue to support humans, but also maybe take a deep breath and worry a little bit less about some of these giant promises that are put out there. I just don't think that the hype can last because so far, no product has been delivered that has anything on humans.
Yeah, I did see that the government released back in July what's called America's AI Action Plan, I think it was, and it's a typical long government document, but it addresses things not just the advent of AI, but everything around it to support AI, the growth of AI. So, permitting for new power sources, right? Protecting the copyright capital that AI leverages. So it's a very comprehensive plan. It shows that the government obviously is taking it seriously. I don't know that diverts much from your prediction because, it's true. Money talks. If they can monetize something, then that's what really leads to the growth of any new disruptive technology or event. You got to be able to monetize it. And you're right, $20 a month for Chat GPT right now is probably not enough to sustain it going forward.
And at this point in time, we have not seen evidence of AI displacing people's jobs. I think the place where this gets talked about the most is in people who are doing computer programming, where if you can have an AI, and when I say AI, I hope everyone can hear my eye roll and my scare quotes around it. With AI, I always say we're very confident about the A and we have almost no confidence in the I. So please hear the irony in my voice when I say AI. But the notion is we can use AI, it can generate code, and it will replace software developers because the AI can continually evolve the code to make it better over time, et cetera, et cetera. And not only is there no evidence of software developers being fired en masse and replaced by AI, but there is also no evidence that AI can actually do the things that it's being promised to do. The code that it writes, in addition to ignoring the fundamental challenges of software development, which have only a small little bit to do with actually writing code. So in addition to ignoring all of that, the code that it generates now, even if it's functional, is wildly inefficient and expensive. And for that to be something that companies can depend on, we really need a paradigm shift in how these models are going about things. And the notion of probabilistic, word generation, where it predicts the next character or word that's likely to come, is ultimately not going to be successful in being able to replace a software developer. So as much as we might appreciate attempting to prepare for something that might be coming, at this point in time, we're just not seeing evidence that it's actually going to come. And I think a lot of the promises that are being trotted out by companies like NVIDIA and OpenAI are largely designed to maintain enthusiasm as opposed to actually reflecting the state of the industry.
Could I just ask quick? I see headlines all the time, that 28,000 people are like the elimination of 28,000 jobs from inventory and logistics, or 49,000 jobs in customer service. And it just is from automation, not necessarily AI. It could be robotic related, but I guess I feel like there are actually, a lot of people, probably millions worldwide, who have already lost their jobs to AI, at least as companies are testing that. I know if you've ever tried to interact with a company online, you will notice that how hard it is to get to a person. You have to go through layers and layers and layers of chatbots and help in FAQs and stuff, if you can even get to that. And so I don't know. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. I just feel like it's maybe a little more optimistic than it feels like real life is, or I don't know, react to that. Maybe I'm full of it. Tell me, Michael.
It could be. I haven't seen those articles. I'm not sure what ultimately might be going on. From what I've read about the attempts to use chatbots and other things, is that you find that because of the probabilistic nature of the way that they're generating language, they are prone to what the industry calls hallucination, the making up of responses. And the articles that tend to grab my attention are cases in which a chatbot is telling someone that there are features that don't actually exist, or that the company has a policy that is not actually what the company's policy is. And it's those types of things that I tend to focus on more when I think about how organizations are going to continue to be able to use tools like this. The change in customer service, if that's kind of an area that is continuing to be disrupted, I feel like that's an area where we have had changes over decades. Everything from introducing phone trees, press 1 for this, press 3 for that, all the way on to any types of screening that happen that way, or email support or chat support as opposed to phone support. All of that has been done in service of reducing people who are serving in these roles, as well as the outsourcing of those types of jobs to people who can work for lower rates, say outside of the United States, but still providing support for US customers. So I don't deny there could be disruption in that area, and I don't want to be dismissive of that. But the pieces that I think we're most likely to wring our hands over, thus far, I have not seen evidence that AI is anywhere near being able to replace human creators.
All right. Appreciate that perspective. It's probably one that's not spoken about enough, at least amongst the literary circles. All right, shifting gears once again, Luella, we're on to our special sauce.
Michael, it's our favorite part. Are you ready to wow us with your special sauce? What do you got
I'm
for
ready.
us? As a reminder to our listeners, this is a question we ask all our guests to tell us, other than reading and writing, what do you nerd out about? What do you got for us?
Well, I think we gave a little bit of a preview here when talking about some of this AI stuff, and some of my interest in following the tech industry. I love computer programming, and specifically, I love statistical programming, which is the area of programming that my work in research really brought into my life and helped me keep involved with that kind of work every single day. And I miss it now as I moved into book publishing. So I started programming as an entirely self-taught programmer, learning how to program through trial and error using good old Texas Instrument graphing calculators. I'm sure some of our listeners also have fond memories of using graphing calculators. And I'm happy to say, looking at my students at MSOE, they've got graphing calculators still. So the tool lives on to hopefully inspire more generations of programmers. Figuring out things on that was really exciting, and it was a great challenge to have. And then that helped me to get a job at Epic Systems Corporation, the big electronic health record software maker, after I graduated from college. As an English major, I was still able to move into a position with a lot of programming aspects to it. Then into graduate school, statistical programming, being able to do quantitative research by programming the tests and the analysis we wanted to do. My favorite language and statistical tool to use is the programming language R, just the letter R. And being able to program in R to do all kinds of amazing things has just brought me so much joy. And I thought, well, I'm moving into publishing, out of research, maybe R is out of my life. But one of the first things I did when coming here was take a look at our royalty calculation system, which was using an Access database that had been modified over time to the point that I was warned it maybe can't handle any more modifications before it just gives up and stops doing what it's supposed to. And I said, well, that's no problem, because I can take that data and write all the royalty code myself so that I can tell you what every single line does and exactly how it calculates out what we owe to authors. And that was one thing that gave me a lot of joy. It felt very creative for me doing shortly after I bought Orange Hat. And now that code we still use, we still modify it and make sure it's working great for calculating out our royalties. So there you go. That's my nerd out thing. Computer programming and statistical programming, something I love, love, love to do.
I really love the fact that you got to take that thing that you were good at and marry it to what you're doing now that you're good at. That's pretty cool. And also, I feel like your programming language R, or whatever it is, you were an English major, and language is language. And I don't know, doesn't that just make you fluent?
I love it. I think that's a great idea. I often think about learning different programming languages as something that you do get better at the more languages you learn, just like
Yeah.
Spoken language or written language learning. The more languages you learn, the easier it is to learn a new language. A good friend of mine from high school and beyond, Tony, who works at Google, watching him learn new programming languages is an amazing thing, because he has the knowledge, the solid foundation of how programming languages work, and a new language comes in and it's largely a matter of learning different syntax. The functions are the same. It's pretty amazing. I wish I was that fluent. Not yet, and probably won't get there now, but it is something that is so exciting. And I was so grateful to be able to use those skills for our royalty calculations.
Yeah.
It is a great secret sauce. And as having spent my life in IT, I can also confirm that the Microsoft Access platform should come with the disclaimer, this may not be able to do what you need it to do, but have at it. So, Michael, besides, hanging out in Orange Hat and banging away on your graphing calculator for new code, where can our listeners find you in the virtual world?
Well, feel free to take a look at our website, orangehatpublishing.com. That's a great starting point. Of special note to listeners here, up at the top, there's a link that says submit your work. We would love to consider any submissions that anyone wants to come in or wants to send in for us. I think that I'm on social media. I think my handle is @Braun, BRAUN, in the books. I think you can find me there on Instagram and Facebook, but the mere fact that I'm slightly confused about that probably tells you what you need to know about my personal approach to social media use. More importantly, you can find Orange Hat and 1016, our young adult and adult imprint, on Facebook and Instagram. And I highly recommend following those instead of following me personally. Yeah, I don't know. Send me an email, michael@orangehatpublishing.com, or you know what? I think our phone number is on our website too. Give me a call. That literally rings the phone in my pocket, and I am happy and proud to be the one picking it up.
All right. So before that phone starts ringing off the hook, Luella, should we dive into some good news?
You bet. Listeners, we love to celebrate your good news with us. You can email us at podcast@wiwrite.org. We are going to kick off our good news by wishing a huge congratulations to our friend and former podcast BJ Hollers and his filmmaking partner Steve Dayton on winning a regional Emmy for their documentary, When Rubber Hit the Road. This is a documentary they made that talks about how the closure of the Uniroyal plant, the tire plant in Eau Claire, affected the community and how they were able to, how it affected them and how they had to reinvent themselves. And I'm just so pleased to shout out BJ and Steve. Congratulations, you guys. Ken, what do you got for us?
My second thing, great. Congratulations to BJ Hollers. My good news is probably a little broader, I guess, in the theme of large topic discussions like AI. This morning, I read that a new fund has been dedicated to the arts. It's backed by the Andrew Mellon Foundation, and in partnership with a half dozen other charitable foundations. It's called the Literary Arts Fund, which its goal is to just disperse $50 million over the next 5 years towards the financial infrastructure of literary organizations and nonprofits. So just in terms of the big picture, that's great news. How about you, Michael? What do you got for good news?
Well, this is a little bit of an early announcement. We have been talking for a while now about the idea of launching a poetry-focused imprint at Orange Hat. So we've published poetry before, usually under our 1016 imprint, but the thought was, could we give poetry a little bit of an extra boost and something a little more exciting if we had a poetry-specific imprint? So our first release under our new imprint, which is called Bubbler Press, a very Wisconsin name, but also a name we hope speaks to creativity bubbling up, kind of like poetry does for many of us who write poetry. Our first release is called The Ghost at My Table, and it comes out November 11th. The author's name is K.H. Mari. And then we're going to be having more of an official launch and kind of events around that in April of 2026, National Poetry Month. So you heard it here first, a new poetry imprint on the scene.
This is so exciting, Ken. We are breaking news on the podcast.
Breaking news. And, we got a pretty strong footprint in WWA membership of poets and poetry interests. We do poetry classes, quite often for critique classes. So I think this news should be very well received by everybody. Yeah. So, Michael, I want to thank you this time for coming and joining us on the pod. I mean, just the discussion about AI to me was very eye-opening, and being able to breaking news on the poetry imprint, I think it made it worthwhile for everybody out there. So all you folks, if you've enjoyed this episode, please give us a 5-star rating in your podcast app of choice. This is the type of action that helps other writers find us, helps us grow the program. I want to thank everybody for hanging out with us in the Midwest Writers Room. I'm Ken Humphrey.
And I'm Luella Schmidt. Words ignite imaginations and spark change. Never underestimate the power of storytelling.
Midwest Writers Room is a production of the Wisconsin Writers Association. Writing and editing by Luella Schmidt and Ken Humphrey. Sound design and editing by Ken Humphrey. Music for the Midwest Writers Room is written by Michael Ramir C. For more information, please visit wiwrite.org/podcast. Thank you.